Hello everyone. Let me start first with my introduction and then we'll move on towards the introductory session of PMP. We will focus on giving you the introduction about so that you can understand what you can expect out of the entire course. Let me start with my introduction. My name is Bhupender and I've got over 20 years of industry experience. I was working sometime back with one of the leading MNCs as a CSI leader, which is leading the continual service improvement function for multiple countries. I am certified Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt, PMP certified Prince 2 practitioner, Agile Scrum Master, ITIL V3 practitioner expert, MSP, which is program management, COBIT 5, which is very similar to ITIL, but this focuses more on governance. We know, right? We all know what to do, but still we have laws to enforce that we do what we are supposed to do. Similarly, COBIT focuses on, are we doing what we are supposed to do, otherwise the organization is at a threat of failing. I'm trained on multiple other topics like CBAP, ACP, then I'm a trainer for blockchain, DevOps, a lot of other subjects, including the balanced scorecard implementation. I'm a leadership consultant, and I'm also a motivational speaker. So that's a short introduction about me. I've been delivering these trainings for over 10 years now. And there are very less number of participants which I can say have not cleared the certification. And that's not because I tell them exactly what comes in the examination, right? I make my sessions very, very practical to ensure that they know how to apply the concepts in real life. With that, they can apply the concepts and can answer the practical questions which comes in these professional certifications. Theoretical questions are far lesser, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to mug certain things. I will talk about that, right? So that's about me. And now we'll get started towards the content and talk about the PMP introduction, where you will get a fair idea about the concepts of PMP and what to expect out of the detailed classroom or the online session. Okay, let's start and talk about the PMP certification course, the introduction to PMP, what you can expect out of this course. I'm going to talk about the entire content in terms of what is the syllabus of PMP, what does the PMBOK contain, what do we have in PMP, why PMP is there, why is PMP so successful, why should you do PMP, is PMP a framework or is it a methodology? If it's a framework or methodology, then what's the difference? Do we have any difference between these two terms? We'll speak about all of that so that you can get a fair idea about why you should do this course and what to expect out of the entire course content. Let's get started. Let's now speak about the PMI and PMBOK guide. PMI was founded in 1969. This is Project Management Institute, and the official website for PMI is pmi.org. It's the world's leading organization which is spreading the knowledge about the project management. PMI, full form is Project Management Institute for the project management professionals, and we have got PMP from them. There are a lot of other certifications as well that they offer, but PMP is Project Management Professional. If you have the experience in project management, bare minimal 3 years, that means you should be a graduate, and if you've got 3 years project management experience with 4,500 hours of experience, then only you can do PMP. Otherwise, you need to go for CAPM, which is pretty similar content coming from PMBOK, but that is for a person who has not completed the eligibility criteria in terms of the experience. Why do we have that eligibility criteria? Is there a reason behind that? There are a lot of questions which come in the examination on which will be based on practical questions, which will be based on the practical situations. You can answer them only if you have gone through the practical situations, right? That's why the experience requirement is there. And also, PMI gives you a lot of freedom about making your own decisions as per the situation. And that can only happen if you're experienced. Freedom without experience can be disastrous, right? So that's another reason. So PMI was founded, and then finally they came up with a PMBOK, which was rolled out, and then they started offering the PMP certification, which contains a lot of topics like the risk management topic, the schedule management topic, the cost management, quality management, procurement management, and so on. Throughout the development of PMBOK, there were multiple sections which were added in various years. Like in 1986, project management framework was added, risk management was added, contract, that's procurement management, was added. What are we going to go through? We are going to talk about the cost management, schedule management, scope management, risk management, procurement management, quality management, and so on. All the areas that you need to be proficient in to be able to do your job effectively. That's what we're going to cover. So PMI offers multiple certifications. The first certification, which can be attempted by anyone who is a college grad, wants to get the knowledge about project management, can go for CAPM. PMI also has got PMP, which we are going to talk about over here. We are going to talk about the entire content and the framework and so on. PMI also offers specialization courses in scheduling, that's scheduling professional, then risk management, RMP, and then program management, portfolio management, agile certifications is something which they offer, business analysis, for that they offer PBA, and so on. All these certifications can be attempted by an individual and can be taken up, right? There is one certification which individuals cannot acquire, which is called as OPM3. This certification, if you have to correlate and understand what this certification is all about, this certification is for the organization. Just like CMMI, the organization's maturity gets evaluated and the organization gets certified on CMMI, what level their maturity is at for services and software development. For project management, OPM3 model is there, where maturity of an organization gets gauged. So what is PMP? PMP is Project Management Professional Certification, which is offered by Project Management Institute, which is PMI. This is based on the PMBOK guide, which is given out by PMI, which is sort of the course book or the content from which the entire syllabus is taken out. So it's part of that. PMBOK contains, the syllabus of PMBOK is, it contains 5 process groups, 10 knowledge areas, and 49 processes. Previous to this, the version that we had for PMBOK, there were 47 processes, 1 process was taken out, 3 processes were added. Now, why was a change been made? In industry, as per the development which happens in project management, the PMBOK has to stay relevant, and that's what we have today. The most updated version that we are speaking about right now contains 5 process groups, 10 knowledge areas, and 49 processes, right? So that's what we have. PMI exam is based on PMBOK. Then we also have a couple of ethics questions which comes in the examination, which you need to be aware of. For getting the PMP certification, we spoke about this one earlier as well. You need to have a project management experience, which should be 4,500 hours of project management experience if you are a graduate. If you're a diploma holder, you need to have minimum 7,500 hours of project management experience. In last 3 years, minimum 3 years, maximum last 8 years. Now, the application processes where, if you have to appear for the examination, you have to first fill the application where you give the details about your qualification in terms of your schooling or your graduation, depending upon what's your highest level of certification that you've got. So you give the details about that. Then you fill the details about the PDU certificate, your professional development unit certificate, are you trained on PMI concepts? So minimum 35 hours of PDU is supposed to be acquired, which you will get it from Knowledge Hut once you do the course. So that's something which is going to be given out to you by Knowledge Hut. This is the easy stuff, right? It's very easy to put the details about your qualification and the PDU certificate. It's very straightforward. What's not so straightforward is your experience, 4,500 hours of experience or 7,500 hours of experience, depending upon your qualification. For this one, it should be non-overlapping experience. You cannot say that I worked on 2 projects in the same day and that means I spent 16 hours in a day. That cannot happen. You might have worked on multiple projects in a day, but overall timeline is 8 hours, right? So it should be non-overlapping project management experience. Your experience should be related to the managing or directing a project, and it should be spanned across all the process groups. You need to mention the information about a stakeholder also in the, when filling the information, from whom PMI can validate, right? So that's where any stakeholder's information can be mentioned. It could be your sponsor, it could be your colleague, it could be your team member. Any stakeholders, primary stakeholders' information has to be mentioned. Does that mean you need to be designated as a project manager? Not really. Your role could be something different. Your role could be project coordinator. Your role could be, anything else which you are designated as. But you should be having an experience in managing and directing a project. If you're confused about that, when we conduct the session, we explain our participants about this concept of how do they fill the application. We give them a template as well to get them an idea about what is, what kind of content is expected. And if they have confusion, we help them out. We ensure that we provide them that support to fill the application. Once the application is filled up, they submit the application. They put the application to PMI portal. Now, before we do that, before it happens, we tell them that please speak to the trainer, show your application once to the trainer to ensure that we know that you have filled the application correctly. After you submit the application for around 5 business days, you might not hear anything from PMI. What does that mean? PMI has a lot of applications which they receive. They have a turnaround time of 5 business days. After that, you will get to know if they need any more information or if they, it's fully approved. If it is fully approved, then you can schedule your examination. It might also be picked up for audit. What is the chance of audit? Is it because you have not filled the application properly? No, the audit is random. 5% applications get picked up for random audit. And if it's picked up for audit, it's a long process which will guide you through when, let's cross the bridge when it comes. So if that happens, speak to your trainer and we would be able to help you out with that, right? We will help you out step-by-step process what has to be done. You will receive an email from PMI as well about that step-by-step process, but wherever you have confusion, wherever you have a doubt, we will help you out with that. It's a long process, but it's not a big hurdle. And that should not be a concern, I suppose, because if you have a valid experience, you should not be scared of that. Now, if in case your application is approved, finally approved, what is the next step? If your application is approved, then you have 1 year from the date when your application is approved to schedule your examination. For 1 full year, your application will stay in approved status. Does that mean you should wait for 1 year? Not really, right? I'm sure you will fill the application only after completion of the course from Knowledge Hut. And why would you do it? Because you need to have the PDU certificate. Before that, you cannot fill the application. You cannot submit the application. Once you have the PDU certificate, you go ahead and submit the application. Now, that means you're already ready. You know about the content. You have learned about the content. And right now, you're filling the application. After filling the application, if it's approved, what we recommend is don't take more than 35 to 40 days of self-learning, which includes most of the mock exams, not going through the content once again, because your concepts should ideally be already clear during the session. If they are not, we have failed somewhere. And if that happens, you need to ask your trainer to explain that concept right there, then and there. If your concepts are clear, you just need to go through the mock exams. And if once you complete the mock exams, don't take more than 40 to 45 days because then you will start forgetting the concepts. Have a time box approach. If you don't have a time box approach, what will happen? If you don't have a deadline, you will never do it, right? Always have a deadline in mind that by this time, I have to give the exam. Block a date. Pay the fees, block a date, right? So how do you block a date? Should you become a member? There are 2 options. One is become a member. Second one is directly pay the fees and block a date for the exam at the Prometric Testing Center. Just to summarize, what did we cover in this video? We spoke about the history and evolution of PMI. What is the different content that we have in PMI at a very high level? Then we spoke about the examination structure or basically the details about the examination. How are you going to be eligible for the examination and how much of experience is required. So that's what we have covered in the previous video. In the next video, we're going to cover format of PMBOK guide, Hi guys, welcome back. Welcome once again towards this introductory session of the PMP. Now let's get started towards the format of PMBOK guide. What is the format of PMBOK guide? Format is divided into three sections. The PMBOK is divided into three sections. One is process groups, processes, and knowledge areas. Now that's the entire content that we have for PMBOK, right? This is structured into 5 process groups, 10 knowledge areas, and 49 processes. Sounds quite a handful to digest, right? Trust me, it's very simple. It's very easy to remember. Do you need to remember all of these, all the 49 processes? Then in that situation, you would have to, start remembering the inputs, outputs, tools and techniques for all of these processes as well. That is not required. Some people say that PMBOK guide, you have to mug it. You have to spend 6 months in preparation because you have to absolutely mug the PMBOK guide. Have you seen PMBOK guide? It's this big. It's huge. Seriously, guys, do we need to mug that? Trust me, if that's a situation, I would not be teaching because I'm not a firm believer of mugging. I don't like mugging things. I like to give people, my participants, details about how can they clear the certification by logically understanding the concept, not mugging things. So then what are we talking about over here? It's a structure that we have within which the entire purview of project management is condensed and presented about all the different areas that you should or could be handling. Why is it should and could? Because in some situations, if it's a smaller project, certain of the processes might not be applicable for your project. Now, that I'll speak about, but what is the maximum number of processes that you can handle or you should handle in a project? 49. What is the maximum number of knowledge areas that you should be handling in a project? 10. What is all the process groups? These you will handle. This is non-negotiable, which is 5 process groups. As the name indicates, process groups is a grouping of multiple processes. This is where processes are combined together. So we have 5 process groups, which will contain 49 processes. I'm going to give you a brief introduction about all these processes, but I don't want you to mug it. I don't want you to remember it. It is not required. You need to understand the flow of project management. Let's take an example and then explain the 5 process groups. Let me first start with naming these process groups. Then I'm going to take an example and explain these, and you will probably say, this sounds so logical. It is. Process groups that we have are initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. Again, sounds a lot, right? These are just 5. Let me take an example here. Let's say you have to start your own business. If in case you have to start your own business, then what would you be looking for? You would want to understand what are you going to do and why are you going to do it, right? This is what you ideally would be looking at, right? Look at a situation where somebody comes and says that let's set up a factory. What is going to be your question? How much investment and what is the return? He says, no, I think that's my passion. I really like to set up this factory because I love producing this product which will help me get connected to the company which I really like. Now that doesn't sound very interesting, right? Objective always when you're doing business about spending money would be to earn more money, far more money than what you're investing. In the beginning, whatever we do, setting up a factory is a project, right? Or setting up a restaurant or setting up any other business. Whatever we are doing, there are 2 things that we look at. One is what are we going to do and why are we going to do it? What is it that you will produce, and at a high level, what is the business case? Would you have complete understanding about the business case that this is exactly the amount of money that you'll be investing and this is the exact amount of money that you'll be making? Well, if that was the case, none of the businesses would have failed. But you need to build some assumptions. That's what happens in the real life to be able to take an informed decision before jumping into unknown territory, right? And that is building a business case. Do you need to build a business case? I will come to that later, but this is what you need to have, right? As a project manager, would you be responsible for doing that? We will talk about all that at a later stage. Right now, let's focus on the flow. So in the beginning, we have the statement of work, we have the business case. What does it sound like? Project charter, right? So the first process that we have within the process group of initiating a project, where we are starting a project, is develop a project charter. Would you want to understand from whom the money is going to come? Would you want to understand who are going to be your customers so that you can understand from them what are they looking for in your product? Absolutely yes, right? You would want to understand who are going to be your team members. For example, if you're opening up a restaurant, people want a specific cuisine. Who's going to help you build that? Your chef, your cook? You need to hire team members, right? So you need to be, at this stage, you need to do high-level stakeholder analysis. What is a stakeholder? It's made up of two words, stake and holder. Anybody who holds stakes in your project is a stakeholder, right? So that's what happens in the beginning, and that beginning is called as initiating. This is just a thought at the moment, right? Have you built something? Not really. We are only thinking of what are we going to do, why are we going to do it, and who all I need to take care of right in the beginning. Initiating will have two processes as I just discussed: develop project charter and identify stakeholders. What next would you do? Now, let's say you have planned to set up a factory. You will straight away not go and start building the factory, right? Before that, what would you do? You need to have effective plan in place. Otherwise, optimal utilization of your resources cannot happen. If that doesn't happen, either you will build something which is not going to take care of your future and later you will repent, or it will not take care of the current needs as well, right? I mean, I'm sure you would have seen certain houses which are built without taking the blueprint from an architect. How does those look like? They don't look as good as, or they are not fitting the need of an individual or a family, as well as the houses which are built after building an effective blueprint from an architect. Effective planning is always required. As they say, fail to plan is plan to fail. Don't fail to plan. Next step is plan. You need to plan. What are you going to plan? You're going to plan towards, now I will talk at a very high level of the processes because this is going to be too early for me to define all the processes right now. So I'll just talk about what all are you going to plan at this stage. When you do a project, what do you think you should be managing? You should be managing time. You should be managing which is schedule. You should be managing the cost, the budget, because the business case only makes sense if in case you spend less than the money that you're going to make, right? You will plan for how much, which is the scope. How are you going to build a quality product or deliver quality with your project? What is quality? Meeting the requirements. How are you going to take care of your resources, people? How are you going to ensure that every stakeholder is aligned to the objective of the project? Stakeholder management. How are you going to ensure that the communication is flawless and everybody understands what's happening in the project? Everybody is updated regularly about the project, right? That is the communication management. You would need to also take care of the risks which can jeopardize the existence of your project or jeopardize the realization of the benefits that you've envisioned, right? Risks could be something which you're aware of which can impact your project, and something which you are not even aware of right now. You can't do much about that because something out of blue happens which you did not plan for. It has never impacted you in the past, can still happen. That is why not your 100% of the projects can be successful. There will be some projects which might not succeed for the factors which are out of your control. Now, risk is not only negative event. Any opportunity is also referred as a risk. I have seen a lot of times people have a perception that risk is only negative. Risk is an uncertain event which might or might not impact your project, right? Did I say negative? I did not. If still you have a confusion about why am I calling opportunity as a risk, do you do SWOT analysis? Yes, right? What is SWOT analysis? Strength, weakness, opportunity, threat. Why do you identify strength and opportunity in a risk analysis? That's a clear example that risk is not only about identification of negative, but positives as well. because they are also probable. They might happen, might not happen, right? And you would want to utilize those opportunities. You would want that to happen if it's worth it. So in planning, we'll plan for all of that. We will define the project scope. We'll define the project definition. We'll define the project management plan, which is a high-level plan about what are we going to do and what are the different methods with which we are going to do that, right? So that's a high-level plan which contains subsidiary management plans like scope management plan, cost management plan, and so on. We'll develop the project management plan as I just said. Then we'll plan the scope management. In scope management, when we say scope has to be collected about what are we going to do and how much are we going to do it. So when we talk about scope, let me take an example to be able to explain this concept. Let's say you have to modify your car, right? I'm not saying buy a car because that would be operations for a company. That would not be a project. Modification of a car is unique and a unique outcome will come out, which is a project. If you have to modify your car, you will go to a contractor who would do this work for you. Now, who are the stakeholders here? Who are the people who are interested in your modification of the car? You, your family, that's your wife, your kids, and probably your parents. Anybody else? Government as well. Why government? You cannot really run a tank on the road, right? So there's certain rules and regulations which you have to comply with. These are the stakeholders. You cannot give, you of course can because you are the sponsor, but you would want the requirement to come from all these stakeholders so that tomorrow all these stakeholders are happy. So let's say you give the requirements. Your wife gives the requirement of the car, your kids give the requirement, your parents give the requirement, and then depending upon that the negotiation happens about what are we going to build in the given allocated budget, constraints of budget and time. So what are we doing over here? We are collecting the requirement. That's another step before we plan. Based on that requirements which might exceed our budget, we need to shortlist to find out within the constraint of time and budget what can be built up. And that is defining the scope. Now let's say scope is to build a house. Again, a hypothetical situation, assumption. House, it's a very big statement, very broad statement. We need to break it down to be able to understand and schedule and find out how much time it will take precisely or how much cost it will take precisely. Now it will not be to last dollar level. There will be some variation which you again should document in your plan document saying that plus or minus how much is acceptable. But when we break it down, we get more clarity. So let's say the house, to build the house, we first have to build the foundation. Then we'll build the pillars, we'll build the walls and so on. What are we doing? We are breaking down the work into smaller components. And that is called as create work breakdown structure. Once a work breakdown structure is created, the last level of the work breakdown structure is called as the work package. Remember, I'm giving an introduction over here. So if you think work package, what's work package? If you are not very clear about work package as such, we are going to cover that in detail during the course, right? So you'll have a complete understanding about what the work package is all about. But once the work package is created, which is a combination of multiple activities to complete a work, the lowest level of work, which can be done in minimum 8 hours, maximum 80 hours, you would have activities. Those activities need to be scheduled or those activities need to be sequenced. Why? Because if you don't sequence those activities, how can you define how much time it will take? You first cannot build the walls of the house. You first have to go ahead and build the foundation of the house. So there is some dependencies about what has to be done first, what has to be done second. This is where we are talking about plan schedule management by defining the activities and sequencing the activities. After sequencing, for each activity, we need to estimate the activity duration. Multiple methods over here. If you have done that in the past, you can take the history. You can find out in the past when I did this work, how much time it took for me. Did it take 5 days, 10 days, whatever? You can take that as a baseline. Is it accurate? Not really. In the past, your technology was different, your resources were different. You might take more time, you might take less time, but it's very quick. You can immediately build the schedule or estimate the schedule for each activity and roll it up to find out the duration for the project. So other method that we have for estimating the activity duration could be asking your team members. What do you do in Agile? You check with the team members, right? How much time it would take. If you've never done this project in the past, how would you be able to have any kind of history? If you've not done it, you have to estimate the duration for each activity by checking with the team members. There are multiple methods for that as well. Some of the methods which we teach, it's PERT, Program Evaluation and Review Technique, beta distribution, PERT or beta distribution. We speak about the developing the schedule using bottom-up estimation methods. We speak about the triangular distribution. There are multiple methods which can be followed to develop the schedule. Idea is to estimate the duration using any of the methods which is appropriate at that situation. Can we ever say this is the better method or that one is better method? It always depends upon the situation. But yeah, that's what you need to plan for. You will develop the schedule to the best of your knowledge. And then that's how you will plan for the total duration, but you also need to plan for something else, which is cost. Cost and schedule works very similar. So this is like when we teach the schedule chapter, cost chapter becomes the revision of the schedule chapter. The tools and techniques that we have for the cost chapter are absolutely same. Just like we define the activities and estimate the duration, here we define the activities which is done now already, and then we estimate the cost instead of estimating the activity duration. How can you estimate the activity cost? You can estimate the same method the way we estimated the duration. You can either look at the history, or you need to estimate the resource requirement. Depending upon that, you can identify what should be the cost of the activity. So either history or you have to do the brainstorming, right? Which is both the similar methods with which we estimated the duration. After estimating the cost, we need to combine all the costs for all the activities and if required, add buffers, add reserve, right? To come up with the budget. Why would you need that? You have certain risks, right? Which can impact your project. What if in the beginning you estimated that with 10 people your project should be done? And even before you started the work, one of the resources whom you hired leaves the organization. He finds a better job, leaves the organization, goes away. Time is spent, money is spent, productivity is zero. So you need to estimate some sort of buffers or reserve, basically, that we call it as, for coming up with the budget, right? Just estimating with the activities will not let you understand how much overall it will cost, because with that, majority of your projects will overshoot the amount that you have thought about, just because of the risks. After we have now spoken about the scope, we have spoken about the duration, we have spoken about the cost, what more? You have to plan for the quality. You have to plan for the resource. That means you have people working for you. How are you going to manage them? Are you going to manage them where you reward them for the work and leave them alone? Let them work, they're matured, let them work on their own, and you only are a facilitator? Is that the right approach? Maybe. That could be a right approach, depending again upon situation. In Agile, you exactly do that. In construction industry, if you're building a house, right, at that point of time, you would have to micromanage in majority of the cases. So again, resource management depends upon your organizational policy, your belief system, what is effective in that project situation, right? But we need to plan for, if it's a standard, you don't need to plan, you need to copy and paste. But this is not standard, right? It depends upon situations. You need to plan for how you're going to manage the people. You're going to estimate the resource requirement. You're going to estimate how you're going to manage those people, how you're going to motivate those people. The best method, as we say, is get everybody together. That's how you form the team. Co-location. Is it always possible? Maybe not. If you're working 24/7 on a project, maybe a couple of resources might be scheduled to work in some other location. Might not be possible because of a cost constraint, or could be some other constraint. But the best method always is co-location. If it's not possible, what do? You can still give them a platform, online platform, where they can collaborate with each other. Do you need to plan for that? Of course, yes, right? Then how are you going to ensure that the communication is made between all these stakeholders? Stakeholder management, communication management sounds very similar, because how do you manage your stakeholders? Through talking to them. Why do you do talking? To manage your stakeholders. Is talking only communication? Not really, right? Communication could be talking, sending out the reports, could be uploading the information to portal. Method could be anything. Imagine if you have thousands of stakeholders. Can you talk to everybody one-on-one? Not really. Communication just doesn't involve talking. It involves the communication of the thoughts, but also use of technology, which depends upon your situation, sensitivity of information, the kind of project environment that you're into. Imagine if you're doing defense project, can you really send out email to the stakeholders? It can be hacked, right? So it depends upon the situation, depends upon the sensitivity of information, what is the technology you would be using. It even depends upon the availability of technology. Maybe the technology is not even available where you're trying to have the communication, right? So again, that is something which you have to plan. After this, what else do you need to plan for? You need to plan for risks, both positive and negative. You need to plan for the risk. You of course have to identify all the possible risks, and then you can go ahead and do the qualitative and quantitative risk analysis. What is qualitative and quantitative? Quantitative is where you can quantify how much will be the impact. Qualitative comes in low, medium, or high, right? That range. What's the point in identifying the risk or telling what will be the impact of the risk unless you document and find out what are you going to do about the risk? I hear a lot of people saying that our strategy is risk mitigation. What's your risk mitigation plan? Risk mitigation in itself is one of the strategy. That's not the only strategy. You will have multiple strategies to deal with the risk. It could be in some cases where you will accept the risk. In some situations, you have to mitigate it because the risk itself is so huge, you don't want to take care of that risk, or you don't want to live with that risk. For example, if in case, a lot of you would have invested the money into the market, right? Putting the money into market, buying some stocks, shares of organizations, that's a risk. There is a risk that the money might go down, but you still do it, right? Some of you might not do it. That means the risk response depends upon the risk appetite. Are you willing to take risk? Are you not willing to take risk? How much are you willing to take risk? If you're willing to take risk for certain things, you might not take an action. For example, again the same thing, buying a share, there is a limit to which the share might go down and you don't do anything about that. That is where you have accepted it might go down, I'm not going to do anything. Or it might be a situation where you are not comfortable with the money going down and you don't even buy a share, right? Because you are not really worried about the positive upside, but you're worried about the negative downside. So you don't want to buy the share. Response depends upon your risk appetite, right? So, but that has to be planned. And whose risk appetite? Not yours. Your sponsor, your client, your stakeholder, their risk appetite. So for the risks, you have to identify the risk, do the assessment of the risk, need to identify the risk appetite of the stakeholders, and then come up with the risk response, for which again you need an approval. Maybe in certain situations to complete the project, you might have to get something from outside. Could be outsourced talent, maybe some resource who's trained in certain technology that you don't want to really hire because it's one-off project. Or it could be you want to outsource portion of your project because that's not your core capability and it's cheaper to buy from the market rather than building it yourself. An example of that, even a lot of organizations which build mobile phones, they focus on hardware or software, right? Some of them work on software and get the hardware from some other organization, right? Some other company. What are they doing? They have outsourced the production to some other company, right? Like Foxconn does that. So that's procurement. Why would you do it? Because it's cheaper to buy from the market. If it's applicable, you would do it. If it's applicable for your project, you would apply that, right? So you will plan for procurement. And if it's applicable, you have to plan for from where are you going to buy, right? So that means people have to know about that you have a requirement. You might have to advertise. Bidders would come. Then you would have to evaluate the bids and award the contract. All of that has to be planned, right? So these are the different things that you plan for under the planning group. Post the planning process, what do we have? We have executing. We have moved away from planning now. We have completed planning. Plan is just a dream. And dream is dream, right? Unless you do anything about that, it's not going to automatically get converted into reality. Next is, after plan is prepared, based on your best of knowledge, you get it approved from your stakeholders so that everybody understands what you're going to do, and then you're going to execute it. What happens in execution? In execution, you direct your people to get the work done. You manage the overall project work. You manage the knowledge, the entire knowledge in the project, right? Entire knowledge, entire content, entire lessons learned is something which you keep on monitoring and managing. You manage the quality. You ensure that what you're producing is going to meet the customer's requirement and is done the way your organization wants it to be done. Then you manage your resources, you're going to manage your communications, the risk responses, conduct the procurement, you're going to manage the engagement of your stakeholders and so on, right? These are the processes that you have in executing. After executing or during executing, as a project manager, do you want to find out, are you in control? Are you doing what you exactly wanted to do, or you're deviating? Let's say you started building a house. Your initial budget was, I want to build this house in, let's say, $100,000. It's a low amount, but let's assume, for a moment, let's assume you're going to build a house in $100,000. Is it sufficient? That's what you believe in, because all your activities rolled up together gave you that amount. It's not a hypothetical amount. You had some science behind it. And it should be done in 1 year. So that's something which you have planned. 6 months down the line, do you want to check, are you on track? Will your house actually be completed in $100,000 or in 1 year, or you're getting delayed? You don't want surprises towards the end, right? Imagine a situation where you started the project in the best interest, only towards the end to know that I have spent double the amount that I wanted to spend. That's where the damage is already done. You cannot do anything about controlling it now. You would want to know, as soon as you start deviating from the project, that there is a deviation, either bring back in control or check if getting additional resources or additional money is worth it, or should you close the project. There might be a situation where you have to close a project. Why would you do it? Because it doesn't make any more sense to spend that additional amount, because you might not be achieving the intended benefit of the project. The project might be closed, right? It might be terminated. Lessons learned document still has to be documented so that the mistakes are not repeated in the future, but that might be a situation. What are we doing over here? We are monitoring the progress, checking if you're on track or not. We are checking the actual performance, which is one of the processes that we have in monitoring and controlling. We are looking at the deviations which is happening. We are always going and monitoring the performance and reporting out the performance to the stakeholders, right? That's how we're doing right now. Are we on track? If not, can we bring it back in control? Or do we need to initiate a change request to get additional time or money, or could be anything, right? So that's monitoring and controlling. Monitoring and controlling, planning and executing goes hand in hand. It keeps on going in a circle because when you monitor and control at that point of time, if you find out that you have to get more budget or more time, your baseline plan document has to get updated. You would need to update the baseline document after getting the approvals. And now that's a new plan document which has to be executed, right? So that's how you complete the monitoring and controlling. And finally, in monitoring and controlling, I'm going to talk about the processes that we have over here, which are monitor and control project work. When you monitor and control project work, you might have to do the change management, which is perform integrated change control. Why do we say integrated change control? When you change anything in the project, it's not just one factor which changes. It's not just addition of more time or more cost, often multiple areas are getting impacted. If you need more time to ensure that you get more time, your cost will go up. Maybe for that resources will also go up. So it's a perform integrate change control. Any change will have impact in multiple knowledge areas. This is where you'll validate the scope. Validation is always done with the customer, where you check with the customer if you're building what the customer really wanted. You have the review meetings, right? If the customer says, no, there is a deviation, what do you need to do? Bring it back in control, right? You might have to make certain changes. Similarly, you control the schedule, you control the cost, you control the quality, you control the resources, manage the overall communications, keep on monitoring the risks if the value of the risk is going up, going down, conduct the procurement, and monitor stakeholder engagement. These are the processes which comes under monitoring and controlling. Now we're going to talk about the closing portion, which is getting the project closed. Closure, there's just one process, and that is close project or phase, right? This is where we have to ensure that the administrative closure of the project happens. We get the project closed after checking the satisfaction of a client, of a customer, and ensure that all the lessons learned documents are updated. We ensure that the resources are released. If any payment is pending, we have to make that and do the administrative closure of the project. Should you document the lessons learned document even if the project is terminated? Absolutely is. When do you document the lessons learned document? This is where you complete it, this is where you close it. Don't release your team unless your lessons learned document is completed. But when does it get documented? Towards the end? Not really. Throughout the life of the project, right? But this is where we say release your team only after this is done, okay? If you have successfully closed the project, celebrate with the team, take them out. Why? They might work for you again, right? Keep them happy. So these were all the 5 process groups that we had, and we have also spoken about the 49 processes. As a project manager, you need to have knowledge under certain things to be able to effectively manage your project. You're not a people manager alone. Yes, you are a people manager, but not alone. You're not only managing the time of the project, that it has to be completed within a stipulated time period. You can always do that by spending all the money available in the world. You have to manage multiple dimensions, multiple areas. What are the different things that you have to handle in a project? These are, first, how much has to be done within the constraints of time and budget, which is scope management. Then, within how much time you have to get it done, schedule management. How much money? Cost management. This is referred as iron triangle also. What is iron triangle? Iron triangle contains schedule, cost, and scope. Why do we call that as iron triangle? Change one angle, other 2 angles has to change. If you don't change them, then if let's say you add more scope, but you don't change or add more time or more cost, what would happen? It's not flexible triangle. The shape of the triangle will change. That means, if you add more scope, you need to add more schedule or cost to maintain that shape of the triangle. Otherwise, what would happen? Within this triangle, we say there is a circle of quality. And your quality will get squeezed. You will compromise on quality if you add more scope without giving in more time or the cost, which is necessary. What did we say? Within that, we have a circle of quality. What is quality? Building what the customer really wants. Meeting customers' expectation is quality, right? So that's what we have quality. Always remember, your quality has to be high. You cannot have low quality. Quality high means you always have to meet the customer's expectation. However, the grade of the material might be higher or lower. Grade depends upon what the customer is choosing, what the customer is paying. But quality always has to be high. That means you always have to meet the customer's requirement. Resource management, that's your people management, is another area which you have to have knowledge in. How do you manage your people? If you don't know how to manage your people, either you would be a submissive manager who would be taken for a ride by the people, who would not be, people might not work, or micromanager, sometimes people might not like that kind of method, and with that they will leave the organization. So you have to be a good people manager as well. Communications management. You keep on doing the work in the good intent of the organization, the good intent of the project, but you don't communicate the progress to the right stakeholders and they feel jittery. Worse, you don't identify the different requirements of the stakeholders and don't communicate to them. What might happen? Your project will get into territory where it is at risk, not because of the practical challenges of the project, but because your stakeholders are not content or they're not aligned to the objective. So communication management. To do what? Stakeholder management. Risk management. How do you identify the risks? What all sources? What do you do with those risks? How would you identify the impact of the risk? What are you going to do with those risks? You need to be skilled in that one to be able to effectively manage the project and increase the predictability of the project outcome. Then you need to manage your suppliers as well at times, the vendors at times, if they are involved. That's procurement management, where you need to have knowledge in what is a contract that you should do with the vendor. Once the contract is done, how would you manage the vendor? How often do you do the audit? Should you do the audit at all or not? All that is part of the procurement management. If there is a dispute, if there is a problem between you and the vendor, how are you going to take care of that? So these are the different knowledge areas, and often when you make change into any one knowledge area, it's not that only knowledge area which gets impacted. You have to make changes in the other knowledge areas as well, or that will impact the other plan documents as well. For example, if you hire college freshers, your budget might be lower, but the time requirement will be higher. If you hire the experienced resources, your budget will definitely get impacted. Right? So it's multiple areas which work together, and that's where we say another knowledge area is how do we integrate all of them together? Integration management. Right? So these are the 10 knowledge areas. With that, we have completed 10 knowledge areas, 49 processes, and 5 process groups. Just to summarize, we have now covered 49 processes, 10 knowledge areas, and 5 process groups. 49 processes went up to 49 from 47 by deletion of 1 and addition of 3 in the current module or current PMBOK. Why it was supposed to be done that way? Because of the current updates that happened to the project management environment, it was necessary. It has to document, it has to talk about all the things which are currently happening in the industry, which are currently happening in the project management space. So 49 processes. As I said, do you need to remember them? Not really. You don't need to remember them. You need to understand the logical flow of the processes of the project management, which we have covered in the previous module or the previous video. Now, apart from that, we've also spoken about the 5 process groups, which are initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. And we have spoken about the 10 knowledge areas, where we spoke about schedule, cost, procurement, scope, quality, risk, resource, communications, stakeholder, and integration management. We spoke about all of that. In the next video, we are going to talk only about the PMP exam preparation and the structure of the PMP exam. That's what we are going to cover in the next video. Okay, welcome once again towards the PMP introductory video. In this video, we are going to cover PMP exam preparation and what the content or what is the structure that we have for the PMP exam. Let's go through this. PMP exam is quite an exhaustive exam. It's a 4-hour exam. When was the last time when you gave 4-hour exam? Not really easy, right? It's a long time ago, and during the college time as well, I'm sure majority of us have given 3 hours exam. 4 hours is quite exhaustive. What we recommend is when you're taking the examination, before the exam, you need to complete sufficient number of mock exams, at least 5 to 6 mock exams, so that you are able to pick up speed to complete the questions. The questions are going to be lengthy. The questions are going to be full of text. You need to be aware of how do you hunt for what exactly is the intent of the question and answer the question quickly. There are 200 questions which has to be attempted in 240 minutes. You don't have too much time. And you should also take one break in between. That's what we are recommending. Why? Because after a period of time, human mind has its capacity. You will get tired. And once tired, what will happen? You would start attempting the questions or reading the questions incorrectly. For example, if the question says, which is not the best option, and you miss the keyword not, what happens? You read it as, which is the best option. The entire meaning of the sentence changes. And you will start rushing through the questions. When our participants attempt the mock exams, it's an observation that initially, in the initial set of questions, they make lesser number of mistakes in comparison towards the end, towards the questions towards, for the questions towards the end. They make a lot more mistakes. These mistakes are happening because they are tired. They are rushing through. Take one break. In the examination, you should not be in a situation where you are tired and you're rushing through, right? Again, otherwise you would have to sit for the exam, right? It's a 4-hour exam. You would have to do it again if you don't clear it in the first go. It's worth it. After how long do I recommend that? First 2 hours, it's a 200 questions. First 2 hours, you should have completed around 110 questions. If you have done that, you know that you have built some buffer. Take a break, just go outside, take a bio break or take a short break and come back. After you come back, get started and now work towards it. If you have built more buffer, you can afford to take more break, but at least one break. That's required. So 200 questions that you have, which has to be attempted in 4 hours, out of these questions, 175 questions are marking questions. You get marks on that, you get scored on that. 25 questions among these are pre-test questions. You don't get scored on those pre-test questions. So what are they doing over there? PMI monitors your answers. Depending upon that, these questions might become marking questions for the future set of participants. If all of you write it correctly, it might not come as a question for the future set of participants as a marking question. Or if all of you answer it incorrectly, then again that question probably is not going to come, right? So they keep on enhancing their database of the questions. Would you be aware of what are those 25 questions which are non-marking questions? I wish. That's not going to happen. You would have to attempt all 200 assuming you're getting marked on them, on all of them, because you would not be aware of which are the questions where you are not getting scored on, right? So these are pre-test questions. Each question will carry certain weightage, certain points. What is the pass percentage that you have for the exam? Earlier, it used to be 62%, but now PMI has not given out any pass percentage. It's a grading system that they have, right? So it depends upon the kind of questions also that you get, and the pass percentage is not disclosed. All right, let's now talk about the examination questions, the different type of questions which come in the examination, or basically the content that we have to cover is about the questions, from where are they coming, and how many questions do come, right? So 200 questions is what we have covered already. We spoke about 200 questions, but from which process group? So initiating has around 14% of the questions, and 7% of the questions come from closing, which should be very simple, very straightforward. This 23%, 22, 23% of the questions should be pretty straightforward and should be guaranteed. Why? What do we have to do in initiating? Project charter has to be there. Project manager can participate in development of the project charter, but as a project manager, we are not accountable to get it prepared, right? This is something which is supposed to be given out to us by the sponsor. Our job starts once the project charter is given to us. You have a project charter, that's like your appointment letter. Would you ever work in a company without the appointment letter? Your authority starts once you have the appointment letter, that is your project charter. What apart from that happens in initiating? You have identify stakeholders. These two things happen in initiating. And what about closing? In closing, we are going ahead and closing the project and phase where lessons learned document has to be updated, team has to be released after the lessons learned document is updated, administrative closure has to be done. If you complete the project successfully, you celebrate with the team. If it's terminated, still the lessons learned document has to be updated. So pretty straightforward, right? This should be guaranteed. crux of the remaining questions is from planning, executing and monitoring and controlling, majority related to planning and executing, right? So that's what we have from the exam content perspective. Each question contains 1 mark. They are not of varying marks. Each contains 1 mark. And remember, there is no negative marking. You can attempt any number of questions as you want, or rather I would say attempt all. Don't leave anything. There is no negative marking, right? Even if you don't know something, you need to take you need to go ahead with your best judgment. Once you complete the examination, if there is some questions on which you have a doubt, you don't know the answer, don't get stuck. Don't get stuck on a particular question. If you have a doubt, mark that question for review so that you can revisit that question later on. Now, does that mean you cannot go for the other questions back? No, you can. Before you submit your exam, you can review any question. But if you have marked a question for review, that's like a reminder that you have to look at that question before you submit your answers, right? So you can mark any question for review, you can go back, attempt it. Once you complete the examination, towards the end, before you submit all the answers, just check in the review sheet if all the questions have the answers selected. When I gave my exam, it happened with me that a couple of questions had no option selected. I felt I selected it, so that could happen with you as well. You might select, but could be a technical lag, could be something else. It might not get selected. Ensure every question has an answer next to it. And then submit your answer or submit your sheet. What happens if your 4 hours is over and you have not completed the exam? Automatically it will get submitted, right? You don't have to do it yourself, automatically it will get submitted. Once the answers are submitted, you will have an hourglass which will keep on going for some time, around 30-40 seconds, which feels like ages because you're very anxious about the result. And then you will get to know about your result immediately. If you have cleared, you will get a provisionary mark sheet, not a mark sheet, it's a feedback form from the Prometric Testing Center, which will tell you that you have cleared, right? And your actual certificate would arrive after around 15 days to the address that you have mentioned while filling the application. This certificate will be valid for 3 years. Do you have to write the examination again after 3 years? Not really. You don't need to. If in case you let your certification expire, then yes, you have to. I'm sure you have worked so hard to get this certificate. If you get it, why would you let it expire? But I have seen some people who do that mistake. Don't let that mistake happen. Contact us, speak to your trainer who's going to train you, and we will help you understand how do you maintain your certification. The easiest method is continued learning. You require 60 PDUs to maintain your certification over a period of 3 years. Let's say you attempt a course after completing PMP and you get 60 PDUs in the first year itself. Great. Now you can submit those PDU details into the PMI portal. Once it's approved, you have to pay a small fee and the certification will get renewed from the time it was supposed to expire, not from the date when you renew it, from the date when it was supposed to expire. Once you do that, your new certificate will be delivered to you, right? Which will have the new expiry date listed. That's how you maintain the certification. This is all that we had in this video. What we covered is the exam content. We spoke about the structure of the exam, how the exam is structured, how many questions are there, how many questions are marking questions, how many questions are scoring questions, and how many questions are pre-test questions. How can you identify the pre-test questions? You can't, so don't worry about that. Attempt all 200, assuming that you're getting marked on that. We spoke about the strategy of the time management as well, that you should take at least one break in between to avoid fatigue. And how do you get prepared towards ensuring that you manage your time well? By taking a lot of mock exams. So that's all that we had for this video. I'll see you in the next video. In the next video, we're going to talk about the definition of the project. What is a project? What is operations? What is the difference between a project and normal operations? What is a project life cycle? What's a product life cycle? These are the details which we'll speak about in the next video. See you soon in the next video. All right, welcome back, guys. Now, let's move forward to the next video in the series of Introduction to the Project Management, the PMP way. let's move forward, and in this video we're going to discuss about the definition of a project. What exactly is a project? We're going to talk about that. Then how do you identify if it's a project? What are the characteristics of a project? What is the difference between project and operations management? These two are, I've seen a lot of people talking about they're managing operations and they would call it as a project because they're managing this as a, as a client would have given out to them the operations which has been outsourced. So we'll get that clarified. We'll speak about project, program, and portfolio management as well. What's the difference? What are the characteristics of all these three? And we'll speak about the PMO portion in this particular video. What is PMO? What are the different functionalities of a PMO? This is something which we'll talk about in this video. So let's move forward now. Let's speak about the definition of a project. What is a project? Project is a unique endeavor or temporary endeavor which is undertaken to create a unique proposition. A temporary endeavor which is undertaken to create unique product, service, or an outcome. That's a project. Why do we call that as a temporary endeavor? It will start someday and it will end someday. If it's not ending, it's not a project. It will have a definite start date and a definite end date. And it is created to come up with a unique product, service, or an outcome. Now, for example, creation of a house. So many other houses have been created, right? So is that not the project? Not really. Every house is unique in itself, right? But when you are coming up with the exactly same product again and again after the initial development is done, that pretty much becomes operations. So as I said, what's a project? A temporary endeavor with a definite start date and the end date taken up to create a unique, either a product, service, or an outcome. Next, let's talk about the characteristics of the project, which I've kind of explained, but let's again talk about that and put into different bullet points. Project characteristics, as you can see on the screen as well, is something which comes up with a unique product, service, or an outcome which is referred as a result. It's a temporary endeavor. That means it has to have a definite start date and end date. It drives some sort of change. Is it a change in the organization? Maybe. It's driving a change from converting an input to the output and producing something new, a new result, a product, or a service. It enables the business value creation, the value that your business wants to generate. Who defines the value? If we are managing the project, we are not defining the value. The value is always defined by the customer. We are facilitating that outcome, we are facilitating that value by working towards ensuring that we capture the requirements, define the scope, and then do all the tasks relevant to deliver the value to the customer, which the customer really wanted. Here we just spoke about value, right? So value is what the customer really wanted to do with the output, which comes from the outcome, right? There's a difference between output and outcome in a process. What's an output and what's an outcome? Output is something that you produce. For example, if you want to drink tea, tea itself is output. Your energy level going up, you feeling refreshed, that's the outcome that you wanted to generate. And that's the value which will be defined by the customer, right? What exactly is the outcome that they would want to generate? We just spoke about what project is, and that value has to be delivered to the customer, right? How would you deliver it? Through project management. You have to apply your tools, techniques, knowledge, interpersonal skills, management skills, technical skills to be able to achieve the defined outcome or the value for the customer or for the project initiator. So project management is application of your project product knowledge. It's application of your interpersonal management and technical skills. You would use variety of tools and techniques over here to be able to effectively manage the project and deliver the outcome within the constraints of time, budget, and any other constraints that you might be having. The tools and techniques are, an example of that is earned value management. What's earned value management? Earned value management is, if I have to explain in very short, if in case, let's say you want to build a house, right? While building the house, if you budgeted that with $100,000, you want to build a house, 50% of the house should be built in $50,000. If you have not built the house in $50,000 and if half the house, and if you have taken $70,000 for that, in all probability you will overshoot the budget. Let me take another example. If the project is to cut the grass off your lawn, and the vendor comes and says that you are outsourcing that portion. So vendor comes and says that I will cut the grass off your lawn in $10, I'll charge $10 per hour, and estimate is 1 hour. What is the estimate? You're estimating the work will take 1 hour, that's your time, and the budget now becomes $10. Half an hour later, you see that they have completed 50% of the work. How much have they earned? Well, they have earned $5. You're sure because they have completed 50% of the work, they will complete the work within 1 hour and all is well. What if they have completed only 30% of the work? With that, they will definitely charge you more, plus the time also will be more to complete the project, right? So that's the earned value management basics, where we'll continuously keep on looking at, are we on track or we are deviating from track? How do we bring it back on track? Do we need more budget? Do we need more timeline? That's your strategies which we'll cover during the course. We will also talk about other techniques over here in the project management that includes a network diagram. It could be the PDPC, which is a network diagram for the project to identify what activities has to be done at what interval, activity on arrow, decomposition to drive the WBS, work breakdown structure. So these are the tools, these are the different techniques that you apply for the project management framework, right? Now, next is, we have spoken about what is project management. Let's briefly speak about operations management. I'm sure by now you would have got a fair bit of understanding about the differentiation, but let's call it out now. Operations management is all about managing the output which gets generated over and over and over and over again. The same output is coming up. For example, setting up a factory. It's a project. You're creating it the first time. Rolling out of the product from the factory day in, day out, the same product which is coming out is operations. Operations will have a start date, but will not have a defined end date. Both are constrained by resources. You need resources. Both generate some sort of business benefit, but operations will not have a deadline or an end date, right? It will continue. Another example of that, Toyota, when they come up with a new car, that's a project. They are launching a new car. Manufacturing the same car again and again for the customers, that's operations. Operations is repetitive task. It's coming up with the same product or a service, delivering that again and again on day-to-day basis. Cleaning your office building, that's operations. Maintaining the car, that's operations. Day-to-day work, that becomes your operations. Now let's talk about a few more terms. We are going to cover now program management and portfolio management. What's a program management? Let me take an example to explain program management, then I will talk about what is program management, but first let me take an example here. Let's say if I am doing a project in Java and 3 of my other colleagues are also working and handling a project which is working on Java technology. All of us will have our resources skilled on Java, right? Every project will have one particular risk that our team members might leave the organization when the project is underway. If that happens, my project will be delayed. For that, if I build a strategy that I have a risk my team member might leave, to mitigate that risk, I might want to hire a resource. I hire a backup. So I have one additional resource to mitigate the risk. My 3 other colleagues also have the same risk. They will also hire another backups. How many backups do we have for the organization now? 4 backups to mitigate one single risk of person leaving an organization, right? That's where the cost for the organization level is going up. What if the projects that we have in Java, same technology, similar resources, we combine that and look at it a little higher level and say that you all have the same risk. Let's just hire 1 or 2 backup. And with that, it's not that all of your resources will leave together. Whenever somebody leaves, we will allocate the backup resource. Cost just went down because we are managing them together. When you combine similar looking projects together to generate a strategic benefit for the organization, that becomes a program, right? So that's a program management. Combination of similar looking projects together to generate a strategic benefit for the organization is a program. What's a portfolio? Portfolio is when you combine similar looking or non-similar looking projects together for the organization and manage them under a single umbrella. For example, if let's say there are multiple projects which are competing towards the same pool of money, same resource, they're getting funded by the same business unit. That's a portfolio. You're managing them together. It might not generate any kind of strategic benefit, but they're managed together to have the ease of management. That's a portfolio, right? For example, my organization might have a portfolio of hardware, software, real estate. That's the different portfolios that they might be having, within which the resources might have different skill set. Combining them might not give any strategic benefit for the organization, but they're pitching in towards the same pool of money, right? So that's how we have the portfolio management. Next that we have in this topic, the last topic that we have to cover is the PMO. What's a PMO? PMO is Project Management Office. PMO creates value through standardization. That's what is given out over here, right? So what do we mean by standardization? Let me first take an example to explain this PMO concept. Let's say I am a very successful project manager and I'm working in your organization. If in case I'm managing a project, generally your projects are very successful. I'm not married to your company, right? I might leave the organization. When I leave, a backup project manager comes and he has no clue about what I was doing, where the documents are stored, where the information is stored, how I was managing the project. What do you think will happen to the project? Down. It will go down. That's how the organization's project management maturity will go down. Project might fail. Do you want that to happen if it's your own company? Not really, right? Organization needs policies, procedures to ensure that projects are done in a standard manner, in a similar manner, so that there is some predictability. It's not people dependent, but process dependent. That's the role of PMO, to ensure that they are retaining the knowledge, providing training, doing the consulting to ensure that everybody is aware of the policies, procedures. They are mentoring the people. They're ensuring that the audit also happens. They're laying down the policies, procedures, templates, and other documents which can be taken up by the project managers for their benefit. So they are more of supportive role, right? They're supportive and they also do monitoring if everything is going the way it is intended. If they're supportive, why do we need monitoring? We all know what we have to do, but a lot of times you will see, as we said earlier as well, police monitoring us, or we have laws to monitor us. Why? Humans are rebellions. We would not want to follow the processes. And for that, if in the organization, if it happens, people deviate from processes will be as good as how much it is followed. If it's only in a paper, it is not going to solve the purpose. So they don't only provide the policies, procedures, but they also ensure it is followed, it's completed, right? They coordinate, they do the communication across the projects, ensure that the projects are also managed in sync. That's the main role of a PMO. So in this particular chapter, what we have covered is we have spoken about the definition of the project. We have also spoken about the project characteristics, spoken about the project management and the operations management and the differentiation between them. Then we briefly covered project, program, portfolio management. And we also spoke about the PMO and what is the role of a PMO, why do we have a PMO, what's the benefit that they bring on the table. This is what we have covered in this video. Next video, what you can expect is we talking about the business case and the benefit summary. Welcome everyone. In this video, what are we going to talk about? We are going to cover project business case. Why have we even started a project? Is it because you wanted to do a project? Is it because your stakeholders wished to do a project? Project is to generate certain benefits, not to take care of certain people's wishes and desires. There has to be a valid business case. Business case is not only about making money, but it has to be aligned towards the objective or a strategy, which has to be clearly documented. And where it is documented and approved, that is project business case document, where we will also speak about the business benefits. So second topic that we're going to cover in this particular case, in this particular video, is business benefits. Business benefits can be analyzed in both quantifiable and non-quantifiable terms. Quantifiable, what is that? That you can quantify, that you can count. You can call it out as I've generated 25% profit, 30% profit, I have generated a return on investment of $500 million or whatever. Or could be non-quantifiable, which could be related to the reputation of the organization. Eventually that will turn out to be quantifiable as well, because with the reputation going up, your organization will eventually get benefited. But those are the non-quantifiable results. We will also talk about next benefit realization, and who is responsible for the benefits realization? When will these be realized? Will it be realized immediately after the successful completion of the project, or it might take some time? And if it is going to take time, who's responsible for it? Is it the project manager? We'll speak about that as well. Project success measures. How do you find out if the project was successful or not? We'll speak about this also in this video. And when we speak about the success measures, we got to touch base on constraints as well, because success might get impacted with the constraints that we have within which we have to work. Let's get started. And now we're going to cover the project business case. This is a documented feasibility study, economic feasibility study, which is used to validate the benefits of the project. Is this project even worth doing? Let me take a couple of examples over here, or let's take at least one example. Let's say you're working in an organization and the sales of the organization is going down. If the sales of the organization is going down, that means the revenue is going down. What would happen? The organization is in trouble. You would want to increase the sales of the organization to bring it back and ensure that the profitability keeps on increasing. Two parts. One is increase in sales. Next is profitability. Right now, your focus is to increase the sales. A marketing team comes to you and says that we want to initiate a project with which we want to create a calendar, which will be sent to the prospective customers and existing customers, with which we will be able to build the brand image, and we would be able to go ahead and increase the sales with increased orders because of the increased brand image. That's what they have come up with. There are multiple options right over here. They can create a website, which they can market it. They can create series of TV or the radio ads. They can probably give discounts to the customers. There are multiple options. Why are we talking about creating a calendar? There has to be some sort of feasibility study done to find out which is the best possible option to take care of the current need or the problem, right? In this situation, it's a problem, but it could be a need that you're trying to venture into. We need to do a document study for that. And that's where the project business case comes into picture. What is the problem? What is the area that we are trying to take care of? Problem or an opportunity? What is the proposed solution towards it? And how much investment will happen in that solution? And then eventually, what will the benefit which will be generated? It is used as basis for the authorization of the project, where we list down the different recommendations which can be taken care of and what is the possible solution that we are choosing. This eventually helps measure the project success at the end of the project, where we check, did we achieve the objective? Did we achieve what we dreamed about, right? Or there is a deviation. Some deviation will surely happen. Reason is, in the beginning, when you list down the business case, you have limited knowledge. You have not done detailed risk analysis. You have not done detailed planning. So you will not have complete idea about how much it will cost. But a high level idea, and a high level idea is bound to change. But this is going to generate as a basis for us to understand if the project was a success when we complete it. What do we contain in business case? What is the need of the business or the pain of the business that we are trying to take care of? What is your analysis of the situation, right? And what is the recommendation that we are proposing? What is our recommendation? What are we going to do? With that, we will be able to build the business case where we decide where we put up the investment and the opportunity at hand, right? So that's how the business case is contains. Now, benefits, if you have to speak about the benefits, business benefits. Benefits could be anything, right? As I said, quantifiable or non-quantifiable. Quantifiable, like 25% increase in revenue or the gross margin. If you increase the revenue, that's a good news. Your organization should be growing. 30% increase in sales, or could be both. We're not saying this is only one has to be listed, could be both. Reduction in operating cost. That's typically where you do the projects for improvement of the processes. If, let's say, right now a process is working in X manner, you're making changes, making some enhancements, business improvement that you do, with that operating cost should ideally go down. Reduced delivery time or faster response time, again, improvement, business process improvement. I'm in fact a consultant for that. Reduced accommodation cost, staff saving, staff retention. Any of these can be put as the business benefit. And as I said, all this can be analyzed in terms of quantifiable and non-quantifiable terms. Quantifiable could be financial, which is again, how much is the benefits increasing. Non-quantifiable could be again financial, which is where we are getting some sort of benefit while aligning with the strategy, right? And non-quantifiable or non-financial would be faster response time. You're able to do it faster, which eventually is going to tie back to your financial terms as well, right? With that, your FTE requirement might go down and you're able to do it faster, with which what will happen, the number of resources either can go down for doing the work, or you can reallocate those resources to do something else, so your cost will go down. Cost going down means your overall profit margin going up, right? So this is how you analyze the benefits in terms of financial, non-financial, and quantifiable, non-quantifiable. Benefits analysis can be immediate or could be long-term as well. What is immediate and long-term? Immediate is as soon as you complete the project, you're going to get those benefits, which could be tangible. That means it is immediately you can find out that it has happened and increased your either your revenue or decreased your operational cost, because of which your operating margin has gone up. Could be anything of that, or intangible, which is, for example, faster response time. It could be intangible as well, which you cannot really associate with a number at the moment. It could be immediate, that you're generating right now, or could be long-term, which will come over a period of time. For example, let's say your project is to create a website. It's an e-commerce website that you're creating, and this website will be a competitor of maybe Amazon, right? If in case you create this website today, project will get completed. As soon as you complete it, you will roll out the website, and once you roll out, you might get certain hits. There will be some benefits which you will get by sale of the product or services that you are offering. Generally, it will be product, not the services, but that immediate benefit will come. But long-term benefits is year on year, the acceptance which will slowly go up for the website, for the e-commerce portal, and in a long term, your benefits will roll out, right? It cannot be completely immediate. Second example of the same immediate and long-term benefits would be, I used an example, right? The calendar example. If your organization is producing a calendar which will be sent out to your existing customers and potential customers, this calendar will be for an entire year, which will be depicted in the office of your clients. Some of the orders you might get immediately, But because the brand image is going to be visible or will be available in front of the customers, they will remember you throughout the year, and this will have a long-lasting results which might spill over to second year as well. Some immediate benefits of immediately getting some orders, and some of the benefits you will get in the second year as well from the same project, right? So that's the second example of long-term and immediate benefits. Benefits realization is, it's a practice of ensuring that the project produces the products or desired benefits as is given out in the business case. If in case you are not generating what is given out in the business case, what's the point? Then that means your business case was poor. Organizations which has matured benefits realization processes can get a lot of benefits from identifying the strategic reward prior to starting a project, because the project is completely dependent upon project success is completely dependent upon benefit realization, and the organization which is doing the project has to generate those benefits. Imagine starting up a business with half-cooked information. Imagine starting up a business with far better judgmental decisions, with all the market research information available with you, having a far better processes available, understanding what can go right, what can go wrong, and are able to generate the benefits post the project. Predictability will be higher over there, right? Effectively assessing and monitoring risk to project success will also increase the benefit realization portion. We need to proactively plan for making necessary changes in the organization and explicitly defining accountability for the project success. Who is accountable? Is it the project manager? If the project benefits will be derived immediately after the project is done, then could be project manager. But often the person, the project initiator, the person who's giving out the requirements, who's signing off, becomes a person responsible to ensure that the project better delivers once a sign-off is given out. So that's what we have for the benefit realization. Next that we're going to cover now is talking about the project success measures. Success measure is all about, can we say the project is successful or not? So this is the key question that stakeholders and project managers should answer. What are these? As you can see over here, what does the project success look like for the project? How can we say if the project was successful or not? Better it is if it is quantifiable. Then no subjectivity. How will success be measured, right? If it's quantifiable, it is measurable, and it's non-disputable. What factors may impact success? Could be external factors, could be internal factors, like policies of the organization as well, like the environmental factors as well. For example, let's say cheapest location to do project probably could be, let's say Philippines. Just taking a hypothetical example here. Let's say that's the cheapest location to do your project, where the right skilled resources are also available. But your organization has made it a mandate, it's a policy that you have to do the project out of bare minimal 2 locations. Why? BCP, business continuity planning. If that's the case, now you need 2 leads, tech lead or team lead, to manage the project in those locations. One in the location where you are located, another one where you're not located. You have to spend considerable time and energy in getting things coordinated. Cost has to go up. What has impacted the cost? It's your organization's policy, which is one of the factors which might impact your project success as well, right? Policy might impact in this way as well, that it is increasing the predictability of the project by taking care of the BCP situation. Some key project objectives generally include completing the project benefits management plan, meeting the agreed up financial measures in the business case. If you don't meet them, project is not a success. Meeting the non-financial objectives also in the business case which is listed, right? So that's the objectives. When we talk about the objectives, we got to speak about the constraints as well. We have spoken at a very high level about the constraint, like your organizational policy, which you can clearly see in the screen right now, given towards the right side of the screen, that says organizational policy, which is under the heading constraints may also include. Apart from that, there could be a lot of constraints which often compete with each other. For example, if the time has to be reduced, the cost might go up because you have to get more resources or more experienced resources. And if the cost goes up, that's another constraint. You can't let costs go beyond a certain limit. So often these constraints compete with each other. A lot of times you will get the request to accommodate a new scope within the constraints of available time and budget. Might not be possible, where if you agree, you might compromise on quality. PMI clearly says that don't do anything more than what you have agreed upon. If you do anything more which you have agreed upon without going through change management process, is called as scope creep. Why PMI is against that? Scope creep, gold plating, why? Because invariably it's iron triangle, you change it, you will squeeze the quality within. Circle of quality within. Quality will get squeezed, risk will go up because somewhere you are compromising and you might not apply all the policies, procedures, risk might also go up. So these constraints typically compete with each other and are never the same, generally change over a period of time and often are interrelated. The constraints that I've just spoken about now typically include TCS, time, cost, scope. Within that we said there is a circle of quality and inverted triangle of risk. Why do I say inverted triangle of risk? Increase the bigger triangle, that means more the scope, higher is the risk for the project. Resources is the biggest constraint, right? If resources don't come, if resources are colliding with each other competing with each other for different projects, resource management is very important to ensure that the project is successful as well. Apart from this, it could be your contractual obligations or provisions, or it could be environment. For example, let's say you're trying to build a medicine. You're working on a project to build a medicine. This medicine is going to cure cancer. You have already found out that there is a salt which has a property of controlling cancer, breakthrough, right? Now this salt is not stable. There are a lot of side effects. So your project is not complete. You're still doing a lot of research and development to ensure that the project gets completed by stabilizing the salt and ensuring that there are no side effects. Before the project is completed, in the country where you're working, the salt gets banned because the country feels it might be a salt which can be taken as a drug for, and people might get addicted to it. Nowhere else in the world it's banned, only in this country. That's an environmental factor. Now, because of this thing, you cannot do the project over here. You would have to take the project somewhere else. It could be the cost increase because of your taxation laws, because of the heavy taxation which might be there in that country. It could be the policies, procedures of the laws, the law of the land which you have to honor. That's again the environmental factor, right? So constraints could be any of these. So what have we covered in this video? We have just spoken about the business case development and the importance of business case with which we deliver the business benefits. When we are delivering the business benefits, how do we analyze the benefits? It could be quantifiable and non-quantifiable. We are speaking about business analysis, who is responsible for benefit realization, and how can we say if the project is successful or not? What measures would be there to define the project success? It should always be measurable. And the different constraints within which the project business case gets impacted. So with that, we conclude this particular video. So in the next video, we will be covering role of a project manager, organizational structure, what are the different structures that we have in the project management, and how does that help or inhibit us to do our work. Then we'll also speak about some factors, some inputs which are common towards majority of the processes, which are enterprise, environmental factor, and organizational process assets. I'll see you soon in the next video. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back towards the next session or next video for the project management professional introductory session. In this video, as we spoke, we are going to cover role of project manager. What is the different role that we have of project manager? Why is it so crucial? What are you going to do as a project manager? And how are you going to enable the success of a project? We'll speak about the organizational structures, the different structures that we have in the organization, and how does that impact or facilitate you to do your work or inhibit you to do your work. What are the pros and cons of different structures? Then we'll cover a couple of inputs, which is pretty much common throughout the 49 processes, not for all, but for majority of the processes, which are enterprise. What is enterprise? Your organization and environmental factor. Environmental is any factor which is of your surroundings, which might impact your project. Then we will also speak about the organizational process assets, the assets which your organization owns, which are going to help you to complete your projects. A project manager role is responsible for completing the accomplishments or the objectives which is set out for the project, ensuring that the project delivers what it was envisioned to deliver. Otherwise, project might deliver, might not deliver. There is always ambiguity. Project manager is responsible to increase the predictability, to help organization generate the outcome which they wanted to generate many times whenever the project is done. Role of a project manager is to ensure project integration is done, which means combining all the different knowledge areas and helping the organization or the project deliver the outcome, and comprises of the responsibilities which are related to planning and defining the scope, schedule development, managing the different risks which can impact your project, and issues. What is the difference between a risk and an issue? Risk is a probable event. It might happen, might not happen. For example, your team member might leave the organization, and that's a risk. He has already put down paper and he's leaving the organization. That's an issue that you have to deal with now. We also have the responsibility of planning the resources. How many people are required? For what skill set it is required? Once you hire them, how are you going to train them? How are you going to make sure that they gel together and work as a cohesive unit, as one team? How are you going to keep them motivated throughout the life cycle? How are you going to gauge the performance of a team and individuals, and how are you going to give them feedback? That's the resource planning, and developing the overall budget and managing that budget is what the role of a project manager is. They say 90% of your time will go off in communications, in managing all these dimensions and ensuring all these stakeholders are aligned towards the objective of the project. Let's now speak about the organizational structures that we have. Primarily, at a higher level, if we see, there are 4 types of structures: functional organization, matrix organization, projectized organization, and composite organization. What is functional organization? If I'm into development, and if I report to the test manager, and my colleague who is I'm tester and I report to test manager, my colleague who's a developer, he reports to development manager. We all are reporting to our functional managers. Functional managers are the ones who leading the function, like dev, like testing, and so on. And the project manager might be a coordinator, coordinating the entire effort. So whatever dev projects come, it's handled by the functional manager of development, and for those testing is handled by the functional manager of test. That's the functional organization. In this organization, people don't report to you. I'm sure you would have seen certain organizations, you would have probably worked in certain organizations where as a project manager, people report to you, which is good, and in certain organizations, as a project manager, people were not reporting to you. This is the organization where people don't report to project manager. Project manager is more of a coordinator here, coordinates the entire effort. What's the problem with this organization? Problem is, the con for this particular organization structure is, if people don't report to you, why should they listen to you? It's very difficult to drive people if they are not reporting to you. You have to be very good influencer to drive people, right? That's where your influencing skills will come into picture. So that's a con. But what's the benefit? The benefit is also there. People, when they report to functional manager, they will have a single manager to do their reviews throughout the life cycle, throughout the entire year. There is no change in manager for people. So from people perspective, this is a good structure. But from the project manager's perspective, not really good structure, because you have very limited or no say in their appraisal cycle. The other end of spectrum is projectized organization where people report to you. Now, people reporting to project managers sounds very good, right? You have good authority, you can drive them, you will ensure that the projects are completed in time because people report to you, and you have the authority to fire them, hire them, whatever you want to do. There is a problem with this organization structure as well. The problem is, once the project is done, people don't report to any project manager unless they're allocated to another project. They go on bench. Remember the times when you were on bench? How did you feel? Felt out of place. Maybe for longer duration, if you were on bench, you felt demotivated as well. You felt that what's going to happen to me? What's happening to my career? Towards the end of the year, because you were not reporting to a single manager, there is no single person to give you feedback, and you felt majority of your accomplishments were not considered towards your appraisal. Demotivation, right? Some of the people might get demotivated with that. So this also, we know that has a pros and cons. In between of these two structures, we have matrix structure. What is matrix structure? When you have two bosses, project manager and functional manager. Sounds good in theory, right? You are going to take care of both the cons over here. So you have two bosses. You have authority as a project manager because you have a say in the appraisal cycle. Put yourself in the shoes of resources. If in case you're reporting two managers and both the managers are giving you different directions, where are you going to go? Confusion, right? This is also not perfect. When you report to two bosses, the confusion might happen. And that is balance matrix, where both functional and the project manager has equal authority as a functional organization. Weak organization, weak matrix is where, not the weak organization, but the weak matrix structure is where you report to the functional manager and have a dotted line to the project manager. So you have some authority to give an appraisal input for the resources, but they don't report to you directly. So you have limited authority. Strong matrix, you report to project manager and have dotted line reporting to the functional manager. We know all of these have some sort of pros and cons, right? There is no structure which is perfect structure. Every structure has its own pros and cons. So which is the one which you should implement? No guideline can be given for that. Composite is the fourth one which is there, and this is the one where in the same organization, one business unit might be structured with a functional organization method, another business unit might be structured the projectized organization method, and third might be structured with the matrix structure. This is where business unit head defines the organization structure the way he wants. The organization just say define the way you want to. Tomorrow don't come back to me with the failure reason. You have to make it successful, right? Majority of the MNCs have composite structure. So that's something that we have regarding the structures, the organization structures. Let's speak about the common inputs for majority of the 49 processes now. First one being enterprise environmental factor. Let me first explain that with an example, then I'm going to talk through the different bullet points which you can see on the screen. Now, if in case I have used this example earlier as well in the previous video as well, but let me use it again. If in case the cheapest location to do the project is in Philippines, but your organization has made it a mandate that you have to do it out of two locations for BCP, your cost will go up. What has taken your cost up for the project? It's your enterprise factor. It's your policy of your enterprise. Similarly, if you're doing the project in, let's say, a country with heavy taxation, your cost will go up versus a tax haven country where your taxation requirement will not be that high. So cost variation because of environmental factor, because of any law which you have to honor for the land. These inputs refer to the conditions not under the control of the project team. You have to abide by it. It's not in your control. And these influence, constrain, or direct the project. These could be internal or external factors which influence the project's success. Internal generally is the enterprise, external is the environmental, and may originate from any or all of the enterprises involved in the project and include cultural and structure of the performing organization. Next one that we have is the organizational process asset. But before we speak about that one, let me give you some of the internal to the organization factors which will impact your organization, which you should consider as an input. Why are we saying these are the input to do the process? Don't you think you need to consider your organization's policies before you plan for the project? If it says you need to do it out of 2 locations, you have to plan accordingly, right? So that's why these become the input for you to decide upon anything and everything that you do in a project. Internal to the organization, these are the organization's culture, structure, and governance, geographic distribution of facility resources, infrastructure, resource availability, employee capability, etc. And external to the organization would be like marketplace conditions, legal restrictions, legal requirements, some academic research because of which you might have to abide by it or adopt it, government or industry standard. Every place will have certain different government regulations which you have to abide by, financial considerations, physical environmental elements, social and cultural influences which might be there because of the place which you're working in, or commercial databases. Let's now speak about the organizational process asset. What does this mean? This is another input that you have to be careful about or consider. It is the organization's asset which will help you do the process well. It belongs to your process. For example, templates. If in case you are doing some work, if you have a template because of which you are able to do it faster, isn't that good? That's obviously good. If you're preparing a project management plan, ask yourself, have you prepared it right from scratch or modified the previous plan documents or prepared based on a template? If the answer is you are prepared based on a template, you are using your organization's process asset. This asset of a process belongs to your organization. You can't take it outside. This is the asset that you use to do your project well. So the plans, processes, policies, procedures, and knowledge base specific to and used by the organization in which you're doing the project is called as the OPA, Organizational Process Asset. Example of them are formal or informal plans, policies, procedures, templates that you use so that you don't have to recreate, rewrite everything again and again every time. Let me quote an example over here. One of a friend, he was working in a WFM team long time ago. I asked him, I used to see him that he used to be very busy from Monday till Wednesday preparing certain reports. One day I asked him, Monday to Wednesday you're preparing the reports, are these the same reports? He said, yeah, these are pretty much same reports which I have to roll out every week. Okay, so in that situation, why don't you create a macro or a template which will help you out? No, I don't have time, he said. Well, then you have to suffer through the same problem every week, week on week. And creation of a template might create some time, but it's going to help you out. How does these templates help the organization? Predictability is there. Everybody is able to understand when the common terminology, when the common structure is used. It's not people dependent, but the process dependent. If the project manager leaves the organization, somebody else comes, he's able to find out which document to refer to and where are those documents located. Guidelines, lessons learned document, which again are internal to your organization, and could be configuration management system. What's a configuration management system? This includes any of your CMDBs, the configuration management databases, and how do you manage those databases. We'll speak more about that when we go through the session because it's a detailed topic about the CMDBs. But yeah, that pretty much contains the details about your organization and how do you manage the knowledge of the different structures, different assets in your organization. So just to summarize, in this particular video, we have spoken about the role of a project manager to make the project successful. Then we briefly discussed about the organizational structures, the different structures, which includes composite structure, projectized structure, functional organization, matrix organization, in which we have weak matrix, balanced matrix, and strong matrix. From exam perspective, you will get questions about the pros and cons of different structures. Then we discussed about the inputs, the common inputs for various 49 processes, majority of these 49 processes, which includes enterprise, environmental factor, and organizational process assets. In the next video, we're going to talk about the project life cycle versus the product life cycle. What is the difference? Do we have multiple products within a one project life cycle, or is it the other way around? We're going to discuss that. And we're also going to talk about the project versus a process. I'll see you in the next video soon. Welcome back, everyone. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about product life cycle versus project life cycle. And we're also going to discuss about the project versus the process. What is the difference between these two? Is it the same thing, or do we have any differences? We're going to discuss about that in this video. Let's start. The first topic that we're going to cover in this video is project life cycle versus product life cycle. Do we have multiple projects within one product, or is it the other way around? Is it that for one product we have one project, or one project can cover multiple products? The project life cycle is a logical sequence of activities which are required to complete the project's goal or to achieve the project's goal and objective, which is again aligned to the organization's strategy. Any project goes through a series of stages which we have discussed earlier as well, related to your process groups. During the entire life, regardless of how big the project is, how complex the project is, what is the scale of the project, what is the scope of the project, etc. Right? It has to go through all those stages. Now, product life cycle generally consists of 5 major steps. To come up with a product, you need to first develop it. Then the product will be introduced into the market. After introduction, you will get some feedback from the customers, and depending upon that, the product ideally is supposed to grow. So there will be a product growth phase in which you might have to make certain enhancements depending upon the feedback that you have been receiving from the customer. Over a period of time, the product will reach its maturity. It will reach a level where it has achieved its potential. After that, you cannot really make too many enhancements because it has reached its top level where any further enhancements would probably make the product obsolete or slow. Then what will happen? Product will slowly start declining. Can you imagine buying an iPhone 3s today? Will it take care of all the software updates which are coming up? Not really, right? And over a period of time, the product will decline and then has to be withdrawn from the market because it cannot take care of the current needs of the customers. So that's a product life cycle. To come up with this or to take care of this entire life cycle of the product, you will have multiple projects. One project to develop the product, then product will be introduced and you will get the feedback. You might have another project, or you will definitely have another series of projects during the growth phase of the product where multiple projects has to be taken care or undertaken to make enhancements to the product. Product will reach its maturity, and then no more projects could be taken up because it has already reached its true potential, and cannot grow for any further. Product will decline and then withdrawn. What does that indicate? A product life cycle will have multiple projects involved within that product life cycle. You will not have it the other way around where one project will have multiple products, right? It's where one product will have multiple projects to take care of the entire life cycle of the product. Now let's speak about the next part, which is project versus process. A project is a one-off, unique undertaking. We spoke about this earlier as well, right? We spoke that project is a unique undertaking with a definite start date and an end date. If you don't have an end date, it's no more a project, it's a process. It's operations. Project is, as it's given out over here on the screen, it's a one-off, unique undertaking. Process defines what work is done repetitively and how it is done. In a project, right now from PMI's PMBOK, you have 49 processes. Process is a chronological steps that has to be undertaken to convert input to the output. For example, if you have to make tea, you need series of steps which has to be undertaken to convert the tea powder and all those inputs to output, which is tea, right? So it defines what is the work to be done again and again and how it will be done. What are the steps that has to be taken care? This will have certain triggers for which the process will respond to. So process, for example, in the tea making process that I just spoke about, you add tea powder, you add water, you add sugar, and let it boil. If it's boiling, then add milk. If not, wait some more. What is that? That's a trigger to which process responds. It's an effective way of managing projects by utilizing repetitive processes. You have multiple processes that has to be taken up to be able to effectively manage a project with suitable one-off parameters, right? So to complete a project, and if you want a repeatable outcome or you want the predictability to go up, you need processes which has to be executed with higher maturity. To improve projects, the process can be refined, which has to be done. You can never say that you have reached the highest level of maturity. Maturity is a journey. You would, over a period of time, have to keep on enhancing it. If the companies which become adamant about that they have reached the highest level of maturity and there is no scope of improvement, eventually decline. You can never say you have reached the zenith of your maturity. There is always a scope of improvement. So that's what it indicates, that the processes can be refined to improve the projects. The model can be applied at any level, all the levels. For example, for sub-projects and phases, it does not relate solely to the single project level. It can be applied to the sub-projects as well. It can be applied to any of the phases as well, right? So that's what we have for the project versus process. In this video, we have spoken about product life cycle versus the project life cycle. Then we have briefly discussed about the project versus the process and how many processes are there which can be refined to come up with effective project, that is 49. In the next video, we will cover revision of all the process groups that we spoke in the first video, and we will speak about the stakeholders as well. I'll see you in the next video. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about different process groups. We're going to do the revision of the process groups. I'm going to talk at a high level first about all the process groups. How is it related to the Deming cycle? If you have not heard about Deming cycle, I'm going to talk about that also in this video. And then what are the different processes that we have at a high level within each of the process group is what will be covered in this video. And we will also talk about stakeholders concept, which is often very much confused in the industry. I've heard people saying, today my stakeholder has come for review, so I need to meet him. What do we even mean by that? They mean client has come. That's not the only stakeholder. There are multiple other stakeholders, so I'll speak about that and get this topic covered. The PMBOK guide, which is a 6th edition right now, has 5 process groups. This was there in the previous edition as well. 49 processes are there which are categorized under these 5 process groups. What are these process groups? Initiating. Before you do anything, you need to have a reason for what are you doing it for. When you get up in the morning, why do you get up in the morning? When you go to office, why do you go to office? To earn your livelihood. There is always a reason behind anything and everything that you do. In initiating, this is what starts the cycle of the project, and this is where we discuss what are we going to do and why are we doing it. Why is the business case? Apart from this, we also have the stakeholder analysis at a high level done over here. Why do we say high level analysis? Because stakeholders is your team members also. You might not hire all the team members right now. It will happen over a period of time once you have done the planning about how many people are required, right? Next is planning. Deming was a quality guru who gained a lot of popularity by doing the consulting work in Japan when he was sent over there because Japan's manufacturing was not able to compete with American manufacturing after World War II. He is the one who proposed plan, do, check, act cycle. You know, all the frameworks that we have are aligned to this particular cycle, which is plan, do, check, act. You first plan before doing anything, then do as per your plan, check are you sticking to your plan, and then act accordingly. This is what we do. In this 5 process groups, the second process group that we have is planning. What are we going to do in this one? We prepare an effective plan. We prepare the plan. Now, before we execute that plan, we need to take an approval from the stakeholder. Why do we need to take approval? Why do we need to take approval? Remember this, project manager is a facilitator who's converting the dream of somebody who's investing the money into the reality. We are not a decision authority. We are facilitator. So you need to plan, which you have done it based on your judgment, based on your past experiences, based on all the information that you've gathered from lessons learned document maybe as well. But it might be best or it might not be the best. It has to have an approval from the stakeholders. What you thought about the risk appetite, is it really the risk appetite or your assumption? Based on that, we have taken approval, because after the approval, that becomes my baseline document. What's a baseline document? Any changes to that has to go through change management process. And then everybody is in a complete agreement about what will be done and how it will be done. That's the getting it approved. Once approved, what are you going to do? Enough of planning. You have planned for how are you going to convert the dream into reality. Now do it. That's executing. This is where we do the work, manage the project work, and get it converted into reality. While doing, as a project manager, don't you want to know how the work is going on? Are we on track or not? Are we actually doing the work as per the requirement of the customer? Are we producing what the customer really wanted? Are we producing the way organization wants us to work? Is everything going on track? Are we on track to achieve our objective for the cost and timeline? We need to monitor and control, which is check and act. Monitor and control is all about monitoring your progress. If you're deviating, you need to bring it back in control, if it's possible. If not, what do? Raise a change request, which might be to get additional budget, might be to additional timeline, could be anything. Once approved, your baseline plan will get updated, and then that baseline plan will get executed. So plan, execute, monitor and control goes in a cycle. Finally, after you have completed all the work, you need to validate with the customer. He will give a sign off that everything is as per his expectation, it's meeting the acceptance criteria, and we close the project, which ends the cycle. This is where we do the administrative closure of the project, release the team. Before releasing the team, you have to ensure that the lessons learned document is completed and recorded, and then you release the team, and if project was successfully closed, celebrate with the team. That's about the high level for the 5 process groups. Now let's pick up each of the process group. Initiating process group. The process that facilitates a formal authorization to start the project or a project phase is called as initiating process group. Why do we call these as process group? Because all these will have multiple processes clustered together to make a group, logically clustered together. This includes some of the project management processes, which are precisely 2. These are, first one is develop the project charter to initiate and authorize the project existence, which will contain at a high level the work which has to be done at a high level and the business case. It will also contain your name, your authorization, your authority, and few other details which we'll talk about when we are doing the course. Second is identifying stakeholders by identifying all people or organizational impacted by the project, and document relevant information regarding their interest. What are they interested towards? Are they involved in the project, or how are they involved in the project? What is the potential impact on the project success? This is where we identify the stakeholders and document all of the information related to that. Why do we do it? It's mainly done to ensure that we take care of all these stakeholders' interest in the planning process. So now, what is the next one? Planning process group. This process group consists of the processes that will ensure that that establishes the total scope of the project. What are we doing? How are we going to do it? So first, before baselining the scope, what do we need to do? We need to collect the requirement from the customer. After that, can we build everything that we have collected within the constraints of time and budget, or do we need to negotiate and come up with a refined scope? Once the scope is defined, that becomes a baseline. Any change to that, as we said earlier, has to go through change management process. This defines and refines the objective and develop the course of action required to attain all the objectives that were defined. The planning process group developed the project management plan, which is a high-level plan which is never complete till the time all your subsidiary management plans are complete. And of course, the project documents that will be used to carry out the project, like requirement traceability matrix. What are the different activities that you're going to do? That's the activity list, activity attributes attached to those activities, the risk register, which will contain all the positive risk and the negative risk, etc. After preparing the plan, what do we do? As I said earlier, don't execute unless you have an approval, because only after approval, the plan document becomes your baseline document. After approval, all the stakeholders, all the important stakeholders are aligned. They know exactly what are you going to do and how are you going to do it. After this, execute. Unless you execute, the plan is only a dream. In executing process group, this is where all the project work related to planning steps are carried out, are put into action. This can be thought of as do component of the PDCA cycle, which was given out by Deming, which was proposed by Deming, Mr. W. Edward Deming. What are the different actions that we do in executing process? We direct our team and manage the overall project work. We developed and managed the project team. What do we mean by developing the project team? The team, when it's initially formed, they are a set of individuals. They need to be united together so that they can work together as cohesive unit and rely on each other's strengths. So we take them off-site. We ensure that they gel together. What is the best method of developing team? Co-location, which is also called as tight matrix. Again, this is something which we'll cover in the resource management chapter when we go through the entire course. Manage stakeholder engagement to keep them engaged. Implement the standards of quality and assurance. Quality has two words, quality control and quality assurance. Assurance is all about your organizational standards. And quality control is all about, are we developing what the customer really wanted? This again is covered in the quality chapter in detail. Implement the training needs. Implement approved changes. Conduct the procurement as per whatever plan that we have built. That means getting it signed and getting it signed for the contract that we have planned. What are the different type of contracts? It could be cost reimbursable contract, it could be the fixed fee contract, could be any other contracts, but this has to be planned. Then we're going to manage the communications and update the project related documents. These are different actions that we have in the executing part. While executing, I'm not going to say after executing, while executing, we're going to monitor and control the project needs consistent monitoring to stay on track and control, and that's your primary job, right? In order to stay within scope, be completed within the schedule and within scope, any deviations might impact the viability, the feasibility of the project. The monitoring and controlling process group concerns two main aspects of project management. And these are monitoring and measurement of project performance, making adjustments whenever needed with the goal of maintaining the project on its pre-planned course. And the second one is providing the checks and balances which are needed to determine how the project is performing right now. In project and control process group, we have different actions which has to be done. These actions are, as is listed down on the screen, integrated change control. Why do we call it as integrated? Because any change will have an impact on multiple documents. You get a resource which is experienced, that's a resource document, but that's having an impact on time because experienced resource should take lesser time and of course will be costlier, so your impact will be there on the budget as well. When you combine these together, it becomes integrated change control. Then schedule and plan control, cost control, scope and quality control, identify problems and implement the different solutions that you have come up with, and the method could be anything. We will speak about how do we come up with the solutions. Control communication, control the stakeholder engagement, and report the performance to the stakeholders. Why I'm saying stakeholders, not the entire, only the management, because the reports will be sent out to the relevant stakeholders. Could be management, could be somebody else as well. Finally, the last process group that we have is closing process group. The closing process group formalizes acceptance from the customer of the product, service, or result and brings the project or project phase into an complete end or getting it finished. This group includes the processes used to formally terminate all the activities of the project or a project phase and to hand over the completed work maybe to operations, maybe to the customer, could be anyone, right? This is what do we do over here? We obtain the acceptance from the customer. We ensure that after the acceptance is received, we check with the customer, how happy were you with the output? So that we can measure did we help him achieve the outcome which he wanted to achieve? Conduct end review of the project, study impact of tailoring to any process. Have you made any change to the process? Why would you make changes to the process? You would make changes to the process because in your industry, the framework might be applied slightly differently. On that note, let me talk briefly about what I promised right in the beginning, which is the difference between a framework and a methodology. And that will explain you why would we tailor any process. If you have to play any game, let's say soccer. If you have to play soccer, you need to be aware of rules and regulations. You need to be aware that if you touch the ball with your hand, it's a foul. You cannot hit your own goal. You cannot hit the ball outside the court, right? You need to be aware of rules and regulations. That's pretty much framework. What are the different things that you have to handle? Is your strategy always going to be same? Not really, right? Your strategy will depend upon the opponent. How your opponent is. Is your opponent, he's very strong, then you might be defensive. Or the opponent team is not that strong, you might be aggressive. So that depends upon a lot of other factors. If you're the captain of the ship, if you're captain of the team, your strategy will keep on varying. And that is a methodology which could be agile. Within agile, you could have many other methodologies listed down like Scrum, or could be traditional methodologies. That depends upon the need of the project. Now that means you would modify certain things, and that's where we talk about when you have modified a process, what was the impact? Did it go well? Did it not go well? And finalize and implement the lessons learned document. Don't release your team before you do this. Hand over the project deliverables to the operations team. Let's now speak about the stakeholders. What's a stakeholder? Stakeholder is a person or a group which has an interest in the outcome of your project or the output of the project. Anybody who holds the stakes in your project is a stakeholder. Project stakeholders, as I said, is an individual or an organization whose interests are affected positively or negatively by the project. Different project stakeholders can have different and conflicting expectations which we have to manage, understand and manage. Stakeholders can include customers, end user, sponsor, project manager, portfolio manager, PMO, because they are the ones who's managing the overall projects. Project managers, project team members, etc. Could be a vendor as well, could be a seller, could be a legal department. Any of these become your eventual stakeholders. So stakeholders, when you do the stakeholder analysis, we don't have to manage only the high level, or we don't have to look at the high level stakeholders. We have to look at all the different stakeholders, right? As many stakeholders as possible, identify them, because in the beginning, if you identify their interest, their expectations, the changes over a period of time will go down. And that's what you want. You want high predictability of the project. This slide talks about the key different stakeholders and what are their probable expectations, right? So this is, I'm not going to go through in each one of them. This is for your reference where we have listed down what are the different stakeholders like project team members, portfolio manager, PMO, sponsor, and customer. Now that completes us with this particular video as well, where we have spoken about the process groups at a very high level, the relevance of those process groups, what are the activities which are done on those process groups, and we also spoke about the stakeholders. In the next video, we will speak about inputs, tools and techniques, and briefly about the output. And we will show you how all these processes are structured, clustered within each process group and knowledge areas. Welcome back, everyone. Now, in this video, we will speak about inputs, tools and technique, and output at a high level. what are these for? At a high level, we have spoken about some of the common inputs. I'm going to give you a couple of common tools and techniques as well. And then we'll speak about what is the use of them. And then we will also speak about how all the processes are structured within each process group in a table. And we'll show how they are structured within the cluster of the process group and knowledge areas. Finally, I'll touch base on what the exam is going to test and what the exam is not going to test. I've already given you tips and tricks about the exam, but I'm going to talk about what it does test and what it does not. Now, this slide talks about project management process groups and how are the processes taken up, right? Here, as you can see, we have given out how we have the processes structured. In initiating, that's where the process starts. Then we plan and get it approved from the stakeholder, relevant stakeholder, and then we execute. While executing, we monitor and control, and maybe because of the change, my plan baseline document might get updated. It keeps on going in a circle unless we approach the time when we have to get all the deliverables validated, which might happen throughout the life cycle of the project as well, and get the sign off. Finally, we will close the project where we do the administrative closure along with getting the lessons learned document finally documented and closed by the team members. We release the team after that. Now let's speak about at a high level for inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs. At a high level, I have already spoken about the EEF, which is the enterprise environmental factor. And we have also spoken about the OPAs, which is the organization process assets. These are the common inputs towards majority of the processes. Common tool and technique that we have, we said that, right, you might have to tailor certain processes. Who will tell you what you need to tailor? Should you even tailor? Should you modify anything? Should you do the way it is already documented, or should you make your own judgments? Experts. It could be you, expert. I'm not saying that it has to be somebody else from the industry. You might be an expert, you might do it, or you might take the help of an SME from your team. Absolutely fine, but that's one of the tool and technique which is common for majority of the processes. Now, every project management process belongs to the process group and knowledge area. Each one of the process will have inputs, tools and technique, and output. Do you need to remember them? Seriously, guys, that's what a lot of trainers do say, that you have to mug them. You don't have to. These are all that we're going to talk about is what are the high-level inputs, tools and techniques and output which is given out in the syllabus. There are many, many, many more which can be followed as per your judgment, as per your requirement. You cannot keep on mugging all of them. What you have to understand is the meaning of each tool and technique and how it is applied, because same technique might be applied in one process and another process also. You will not get those kind of questions where how many tools and techniques are there or what are the exact tools and techniques for this process. That doesn't come. That doesn't mean that there will not be any theoretical question which will come. What are those theoretical questions? We will talk about that when the course is going on, and we will actually tell it to you that this is something which you should remember from the exam perspective. For example, if there is a theory which is proposed by someone, we will not be able to explain it to you logically how you can remember the name. We can tell it to you about what is the meaning of that theory, what is the logic behind that theory, but who proposed it, the name of the individual, you got to remember. So we'll talk about that later. Now in this table, what do we see? We see the clustered process groups and knowledge areas, and within this intersection, all the 49 processes are listed. Did I say you don't have to remember them? Yes, you don't have to remember them. You have to understand the flow of the project management, right? So in the process groups and knowledge areas, we have integration management here. You see that there are so many other processes which are listed into the knowledge area of integration management. This is the one and only knowledge area which has presence across all the process groups. It has a process in each of the process group. Only one single knowledge area. That is something very easy to remember. You have only one knowledge area which has processes present across all the process groups. What is that? Integration management. Next is scope management, then schedule management, cost management. Often these are referred as TCS, time, cost, and scope, right? Quality management, within the iron triangle of TCS, you have a circle of quality. Resource management, communications management, resource is your people management, then communication management, risk management, procurement management, and stakeholder management. These are all the processes which are clustered under the knowledge areas and the process groups. Let me now touch base on some of the exam tips where we're going to talk about what the exam does test and does not test. It does test your knowledge of PMI processes and philosophy. Right? What are the different processes? What is the philosophy of PMI? Your understanding of many terms that were used to describe the processes. The different terms which are used, the meaning of those terms, the meaning of those tools, what is the applicability of those tools, what is the use of those tools, where all they are used, your ability to apply the processes in various contexts. Your understanding of professional responsibilities as well. As a project manager, you have certain responsibilities and ethics that you have to abide by, which is applicable to project management discipline. Your ability to apply the formulas to schedule, for costing, for estimating, and for other problems. So formulas, there are a lot of formulas which we have, which will be taught along with the exercises so that you understand not just the formulas, but the application of those formulas as well, so that you can do the project with pen and paper and you don't have to depend upon only the tools. You have multiple tools which you can use like MS Project. You have Primavera, Jira, multiple project management tools are there, but you can do the project with pen and paper. What it does not test, your project management experience, your common sense in different situations, your knowledge of the industry practices, specific industry because it's generic, your knowledge of the software tools. So there is no question on any of the tools, or rather I would say software tools. What you have learned in the management school. So that completes us with this introductory course for the PMP. In this entire course, in this entire video, we have spoken about history of PMI and PMBOK. We also spoke about relevance of PMP and other certifications offered by PMI. What is the application process for PMP? We spoke about that as well. How do you fill the application and how can we help you out in filling out the application if you have any doubts? What is exam length? The pass marks, overall questions related to the examination was also covered. Then we spoke about the structure of PMBOK, in which we spoke about the 5 process groups, 10 knowledge areas, and 49 processes. We started with the details of the process groups, the flow of the process groups. Then we spoke about the knowledge areas, and we covered all the 49 processes and explained how do they logically connect with each other. Then we spoke about the definition of project. What is project and operations? What is the difference between these two? We covered that briefly as well. We also went into details of project versus program versus portfolio management and covered a most confusing topics for a lot of people, which is PMO. Then we spoke about business case, benefit summary, project success measures, and the different constraints within which the project is often operated. We also covered organizational types that are projectized, matrix, within which you have weak matrix, balanced matrix, and strong matrix, functional organization, and composite organization. What is the role of project manager in ensuring that the project is successful? Common inputs, tools, and techniques is another topic that we covered. And we spoke about project versus product life cycle and project versus the process. And finally, we also covered stakeholders before we wrapped up and spoke about the entire content at a high level. So this is what we have covered in this entire course. I hope you found this entire course very informative, and I hope that you will take up the certification exam pretty soon and apply all these concepts in your real life, in your organizations as well. If you have any questions, any doubts, anything that you want to ask me, please put the questions in the forum and we will get back to you as soon as possible. I hope to see you soon. This is Bhupender Singh, your mentor, project management mentor, signing off. Thank you, everyone.